show you where you. And some really nice views. So just check it out.
What's the name of it? Yeah.
Well, if you go to the site is wherever you enter, it's new trail maps and there's a code. You just hit the
Oh,
hit the
okay, I
code.
see what you
and it'll
mean.
come in.
My name's Helen Henderson and I've lived in Stoughton for 33 years. And I hike in Burn Street all the time. I live about 2 minutes away. I just walk down the street and hike there. I grew up in Boston and right on the Neponset River, so I have a keen interest in the Neponset River. It was very polluted then, but I still loved living there.
Still is.
Yeah, it was far worse then, let me tell you, it was a long time ago.
It's perfectly fine for recreation.
Just don't eat the fish.
Yes.
Thank you.
My name is Nick Dufresne. I work in the Stoughton Engineering Department. Like Craig, I travel north to work. I live in Westport. And I'd say one of the fun things I've gotten into since working here, I've only been here about a year and a half, a little over a year and a half, is manage the Cape Rental Stall Park project. That's almost done. That Rich has done a great job with. And yeah, that's been really fun to watch.
My name is Richard Terry. I moved to Stoughton in the late fifties from the Beach Street projects. Thought I was a tough city kid and the West Stoughton boys straightened down. And moved away for a while, then came back 32 years ago. And nice coming back to this town. It's a really nice town. And if you wanted to find me as a kid, go to Old Albert's, which is called Town Pond. And a few of my friends and I built a houseboat big enough that it had 4 bunks, a trapdoor on the floor, windows, screens, and doors, and the trapdoor was in case pirates or parents boarded the boat. It was 16
I
feet
love
long
it.
and about 14 feet wide. And in the wintertime, it was a great place to tie your skates on and go skating. I'm now kind of semi-retired and got involved. I was asked to be place a member of the advisory council to Neponset River. Artist Johnson is stepping down. And I've been on board since September and we're working on how to make more people aware of our watersheds. And Larry is helping us tremendously, as is the whole town conservation commission and historical commission is adding input by what are the real names of these streams and ponds, and how many names does one stream have? More. So it's going to be fun listening to Stoughton news, Stoughton enthusiasts, and everything Stoughton. And have a little fun stuff with that.
Hi, I'm Eric Coleman. I've been in Stoughton for a little more than 50 years. Been in town meeting for about that length of time. I'm currently working on the project at Glen Echo Park. We're going to develop it. I don't know if everybody's been there. Beautiful place. I consider it the prime Stoughton. And the Neponset River, occasionally walk there by near the Dunkin' Donuts on Neponset Street. There's a park there. And right by the storage places. They used to dump sewage in that area. Not in the pond, but doesn't it lead to an area in which there's pipes going through with those manhole covers?
Where the airport used to be,
Um,
right by where the airport, the Canton Airport. Yeah.
Well, it's a nice walk. Anyway.
I was born and raised in Brazil. I moved to Boston for about just over a year and a half now, following my husband. He has been transferred to Boston for this company, so that's and I'm mom, not full time work, I'm busy. I'm doing some volunteer work at the New Community Center, supporting the community, studying in Brazilian and Portuguese community. Also the Catholic Church. That's something new. I do recently come up with this topic about the nature, being from and the Amazon and also the Pantanal. So I really like the topic somehow. I want to be some kind of the voice of the residents, immigrants, and also be part of the different communities. I work in Stoughton about 7 years now. I'm originally from Boston, New York, and so when I moved here with my husband, I told him we had to find someplace in parks and trails and trees in the Boston area, and so we ended up living in Stoughton. And well, like the connection, like the Blue Hills, being able to find all the like parks here, and kind of taking a time to discover all the things.
Hey everyone, Seth Bryan, I work with Kleinfelder. We've been a partner on this grant program on the last phase and then this one as well. I'm a water resources engineer and have mostly worked on the flood study side of things. I live in Jamaica Plains, so most of my time in Stoughton has been for the project, so I spent a lot of time here in the rain looking at stormwater infrastructure. It's been lovely, lots of ponds and streams to look at, so it's been fun.
Hi, everyone. I'm Eden. I am also with Kleinfelder. I'm a climate resiliency planner. I'm relatively new to this project, but I'm super excited to get involved. And since I don't have a ton of experience on this project yet, although that will obviously change, I think my favorite memories are still yet to be made.
Hi, I'm Carrie Snyder. I am the Managing Director for Community Resilience at the Neponset River Watershed Association. I do not live in Stoughton, but I am originally from Dorchester, so I've spent a lot of time around the Neponset River and have fond memories of visiting it when I was a kid. So, and now I get to kayak it today. I think that's.
Same.
My name is Sam Shonai. I'm originally from Nigeria. I've been in Stoughton for about 27 years. And I'm a tax accountant and a developer in Stoughton. You guys might know Janet's house. The next house to it, I was the one that built those 2 houses. And a couple of houses on Sumner Street and Cedar Street. So I love Stoughton. I love to work here and doing some other projects in Kenton as well, and some other areas like Bridgewater and so on and so forth. And I know Craig.
Everybody knows Craig.
Thank you. Well, we're really pleased that so many of you stepped up and are willing to be on this advisory group, and we have room for others. So if there are neighbors that you talk to, others that would be interested, please invite them to join. I think we're about 11 and we're looking for about 15. Still room for more.
Awesome. Sure. Well, I just wanted to make sure everybody knew who the project team is. This project is really spearheaded by the town of Stoughton. You guys have a great staff in Stoughton, and Mark, Craig, and Larry and Nick have really been leading the charge on improving climate resilience in town. So I don't know, Craig, if you wanted to say anything about the project or.
Yeah, so like I started off saying earlier, we became an MVP community in 2020, which got us into the program, and from there we could apply for MVP action grants. And our first action grant concluded last year, and that was a town-wide hydraulic and hydrologic study. And it was an assessment, a flood study basically of the town to find, we did a stormwater model and found areas that flooding occurred and so forth, and found our vulnerable spots, so the areas that were most sensitive. And then we had a couple of concept plans drafted up of how we could, fix those areas potentially. But the main key of that was we have now a stormwater model where we can analyze different storm events throughout the town. So with this MVP grant, we're taking this to the next step. This is a townwide culvert assessment. So we're taking that data that we utilized in the first study, and now we can apply it to the culverts, and we can find where the vulnerable culverts are. And the goals are to sort of inspect them structurally, see if they're undersized, oversized, if they're just structurally deficient, and then end up with a prioritization plan of replacement repairs. And that's kind of the overall goal, but tied into all of that, obviously, is resiliency and improving those vulnerable areas that we identified in that first MVP grant. So if a road floods and it's not passable by emergency vehicles, or you can't get to the warming shelter or things like that. So it's all kind of tied together. You know, from my perspective, I'm a civil engineer by trade, so you know, I'm a pipe guy, you know, stormwater calculations and all that business. That's you know, the nuts and bolts of the things that I do, but it's all tied into the community and impacts, you know, everybody that lives here. So it's really important information and things that we're gathering. So I really look forward to what we can figure out and prioritize these vulnerable areas for this project.
Great, thank you. And Kleinfelder is the technical consultant, the engineering firm that's helping with that, and Neponset River Watershed Association is also on board, trying to round out some community engagement and make sure that that people know what's going on and can be involved as these projects sort of get developed.
I really should add to what I set out to say first, that we couldn't do this without the partnership that we have with Neponset and with our consultants, Kleinfelder. They really do, you know, a lot of the work behind everything that comes out of these studies. So you know, we really couldn't do it without them, and they're a great team to work with. We've been doing it for years with Neponset and Kleinfelder. We've been with you guys for 5, 6.
Yeah.
The track record.
Excuse me, in Glen Echo Park, you and Mark did a fantastic job with hydraulics and the design. It's great to go there. Thank you for what you did.
We always go by and see if anything's working properly.
Except for the game.
That's the one thing.
Oh, I don't know why this isn't what I wanted to do. Okay, here we go. So I want to take a step back and just sort of set the context so that everybody is sort of starting from the same page. And I want to talk a little bit about what climate change is in this region and what we mean when we say we want to build resilience. So there are several key climate impacts that we are already experiencing in this region. We've got higher heat, so more heat waves with more days that rise above 90 degrees Fahrenheit. We've got precipitation changes, so more of our rain is coming down as really heavy downpours. We're not getting it sprinkled, you know, throughout the year. It's being concentrated, and we're getting more of that water coming down all at once. So we therefore experience some flooding because we're getting so much water at once. And on the flip side, we experience drought because we're not getting the rain at the time that we're used to getting it. We're seeing sea level rise, and that is both due to melting ice caps, but also simply the expansion of the water molecules as the globe warms. And we're seeing more windstorms, so more of these extreme storms, and we'll talk about some of the consequences of those storms. I also want to make sure that we're paying attention to the disproportionate impacts of climate change. So not everybody experiences climate change the same way. If you are in an urban environment with more pavement and fewer trees, you're going to have more of those heat island effects. That pavement is going to, you know, absorb those high heat days, that the heat, and it's going to reflect it back at night. So you're not getting any of that cooling like you would in, you know, in a suburb with a tree-lined street, lots of shade. So I want to make sure that we're cognizant of that. We also, there are also people who are more vulnerable simply because they can't get out of the way if there's an extreme storm, or they have more difficulty bouncing back. And so the people that, the groups of people who are prioritized by, you know, all of these programs to improve climate justice are people of color, those who are low income, the very young, the very old, and the disabled, who can't readily, you know, relocate or, again, get out of the way. And each of these impacts has consequences for people, places, and the environment. So heat waves exacerbate respiratory illnesses in particular. So, people who already have those pre-existing conditions are at higher risk. If you don't have cooling in your home, that's a big risk, especially if we're talking about these more frequent heat waves. Compound that with, power outages, with so many people using the cooling apparatus that they have. And so you lose power and then nobody can cool down. People who work outdoors are at risk of heat-related illness, heat stroke. And so employers are going to need to figure out how they're going to manage this and make sure that they're providing breaks for their workers, making sure they can have water, can sit in the shade and cool down during the workday.
When was that heat, the power outage? So 1,000 people.
Oh, it got cut off.
July 26th.
Yes.
What's the year?
So I think it was relatively recently. I want to say 2019. I'm not positive though. I can't believe it got cut off.
Well,
Yes, that we have here. Right, winter and then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Summer as well.
There are consequences to infrastructure. One of the main topics for this phase 2 of the current project is to look at culverts. With these really heavy rains, these culverts carry the water underneath the road. And if you have too much water, if those culverts aren't sized for today's storms, most of them are sized for storms that we used to get decades ago, you could get washouts. Now this photo is not from Massachusetts, but this is the type of thing that could happen as culverts get overwhelmed. You also have up in the top left, a dam failure in Canton. Again, we've got lots of these, we've got lots of infrastructure around the watershed, and none of it was built to withstand the storms that we're getting today. And in the lower left, that is Norwood Hospital, which got flooded out, even though everything was working the way it was supposed to. All of their stormwater infrastructure, all of those pipes designed to move water away, were working properly. They just got completely overwhelmed by how much water fell in a really short period of time. And they found that the hospital was the low-lying area. And so it took out, this vital resource at the beginning of a global pandemic. And it's not coming back. So these are the types of things that that can happen as the weather changes, and why we need to make sure that we're increasing those sizes. We're upgrading the infrastructure that we have to make sure that people have the services that they need. Public safety and property damage. So with these storms, you can get flooding in homes, oftentimes in places where you haven't experienced flooding before. We're seeing new places where storm flooding is happening. With downed trees and down power wires, it could interfere with the ability of public safety to get to the places that they need. With drought, it could interfere with, water resources and how much water is available for public safety needs. And then people just dealing with the property damage that happens with these extreme storms. And of course, there are ecological consequences as well. You've got drought represented over here on the left. I can't remember where in the Neponset this is, but this is a real consequence of both the heat waves and the changes to the precipitation patterns in the region. We're getting some of those really heavy rains are flushing more pollutants into our waterways, causing beach closures if it's too dangerous for people to swim. It's changing the seasons, so some of the disease vectors are changing. Mosquitoes might be around for longer seasons, carrying with them West Nile and Tripoli. And we can see sewage overflows. Again, with our infrastructure, you know, sometimes that stormwater gets into our sewer system and causes sewer overflows, and that sewage gets into our waterways and contaminates the environment. So that's the bad news. But there are things that we can do to build resilience, and we're doing them now, and we need to accelerate the rate at which we're doing that. But people don't always know what it means when we talk about climate resilience. So climate resilience is the ability to, is the ability to withstand or bounce back from some of these climate impacts. And, you know, so we acknowledge that there is climate change, that it is impacting us, and we're working towards reducing that impact by reducing greenhouse gases, et cetera. But some of those changes are here and some of them are already in motion. So we need to make changes within our communities to make sure that we are empowering and making it easier for our residents and businesses to bounce back when these things happen. So you often hear about climate mitigation, and that's what I mean when I talk about reducing greenhouse gases. We're trying to mitigate the impact of climate change. And it comes together with resilience. We need to be doing both at the same time. And this program through the state, the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program, the MVP program, is trying to help cities and towns do just that. And that's why we're engaged in this project here this year and through June of 2026. So let me see if I can get the slides back.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You said that people don't understand what you're trying to do. And you put up that chart that had some traits and just trying to plant.
Sure.
So as I was listening to you, I heard words like mitigation, resilience, and some of the buzzwords like that.
I know.
People don't get it.
Yes.
And that's why when people talk about climate change, it sounds like fun for most people. So what's climate change? What's changing? I see rain, I see sun, I see, snow. Nothing is changing. We've got to figure out a way to get the language down to common language that most people can understand.
I absolutely agree with you. And I'm hoping that this group can help because this is real and it is impacting people's lives, even if they're not connecting it with
Right.
climate change.
Right.
So we need to figure out a way to make that connection, but also to make sure that people know that there are things that we can do. You hear climate change and it sounds so big and so overwhelming. But there are actions that we can take collectively and individually, and that's what we're hoping to convey. Oh, so this was the slide that you didn't see. So mitigation, adaptation, and coming together to try to make sure that we've got stronger communities that are safer and healthier for people to live in. So with that, I will then turn it over to Seth and Eden.
Yeah, so Gary just gave a great background on kind of all of the climate hazards that are out there, and the great news is that Stoughton is already taking action for them. This is phase 2 of the project. We did a 2-year grant just last year that started to look at flooding in particular as a hazard. We really approached this kind of from 2 sides: the technical side, where we sought to create a model, as Craig mentioned, that would be able to predict where flooding is going to be worse in the future. So this is a computer simulation that allows us to say if this much rainfall falls, how much flooding is expected to occur. And we created it for the entire town. So we weren't focused on one area. We kind of took out the bias, and we're like, let's see really where is vulnerable and where is having impacts now and where can we expect to have impacts in the future. So that was kind of the technical side of things, but then we also wanted to make sure that we were pulling input from residents too. So during the last phase, there's also a substantial portion that went towards putting on the survey to the town, to try to get feedback from all of you about where you're already seeing flooding, so we could kind of ground truth our technical portion, and also make sure what we were focusing on was also important to the community. And then the town has started lots of programs like going to the schools, talking about climate change. We've started groups like this to get kind of more focused input. So really trying to bridge both the community and the technical portions and bring them together. So we can have solutions that are lasting and that people actually want, and not just something that we dream up in a vacuum. And that's just on the left there is an example of when we say model results, that's kind of what they look like. So that's a map that's Central Street, kind of in the northwest corner of the town, on Steep Hill Brook. And the blue is shaded for predicted flood depth. So we get kind of high detail predictions of flooding for a variety of storms. So for this one, it's kind of worst case scenario predicted in 2070, so under climate change conditions. So that's over 10 inches of rainfall in a day, which is, it's unlikely, but it's a possible storm that they're predicting we could see in the future.
So, excuse me, so you're saying that the blue area there is the more flood prone areas?
Yep.
Now, I remember responding to that email that went out to most residents in Stoughton, I believe it was last year. And I responded stating what I observed. So was that mapped out from those responses?
So that was part of how we developed the model. The model uses it simulates the rainfall and it uses physics and hydraulics to predict it, but then we use your responses and also our observations to ground truth it. So yeah, thank you. So we kind of independently predicted where flooding would be, and then we looked at all of your responses and made sure they lined up. And if there's an area where people said there's flooding and we weren't predicting it, we kind of looked closer and we're like, why aren't we predicting it? So it was kind of to help us calibrate our model and also make sure we were focusing on the right areas.
Question, what is a 100-year flood? How much rain is that? Can that be quantified?
Yeah, so a 100-year flood just means it has a 1 in 100 probability of happening every year, so a 1% chance. So very low, but possible. Under today, we predict that's about 8 inches of rain over 24 hours. In the future, with climate change projections, they're predicting that's going to get worse. So in 2070, that's the one I have here, they're predicting 10.2 inches. So like a 20% escalation.
When was the last time we had 100-year storm area?
Not sure off the top of my head.
Does it have to be rain only, or can it be snow as well?
That's a good question. Most of the data is based on rain, but snow can certainly cause flooding as well, especially when you have, I think that's a good point. Like, as we see these big swings in temperature, we can have the case where we have a snowpack and then rain falls on it and that turns into flooding. We didn't look at that explicitly, but these rainfall values we're using are pretty conservative. So our hope is that it kind of captures the total water we'd expect to see in flooding.
Snow melting is more gradual thing,
It is.
but it accumulates. Has that been a problem? So
It has in places, just this past year in Maine, there's a major flood that wasn't that much rainfall, but it was in the spring and saw a lot of snow melt. So I can't say in Stoughton it has, but we've seen places where it's definitely exacerbated flooding. That's a good question. Next slide. So this is kind of just the full scope, I think, gone through most of it, but the end goal is to identify key locations in the town to focus on and key projects. And the project that we're all here today to talk about, the culvert one, was kind of one after that. So I just put another example here where you can kind of see with the predictions and changes in rainfall what that could mean. So this is the downtown area of Stoughton. We did a higher resolution model here, so this is a 10% probability storm, so fairly likely. You'll probably see it in your lifetime. Under present day conditions, and you can see the blue is where there's predicted flooding, so it's not much. The pipes are sized to handle it, so things are kind of working as they are. But if you go to the next slide, just increasing it slightly, kind of with the expected 2070 precipitation, which isn't all that much of a difference. It's up to 2.81. But because the pipes weren't designed to handle kind of future conditions, you can see we're modeling that there's backups and kind of more flooding throughout the roads. And in some key locations like the police station and town hall, right kind of in the main center downtown.
You know what the capacity is currently for rain in 2 hours with heights from handle?
So they could mostly handle the 10-year storm under present day conditions, which for a 2-hour storm is I think 2.3 inches. But when you go past that, it starts to back up and spill onto the streets, which is causes flooding. And then just one more example. As we've alluded to, culverts were shown to be one place that there was substantial risk in the future. This is one example, kind of a big one under Ames Long Pond. That's West Street is kind of the causeway down the middle. When we model again that really extreme future storm, that 10 inches in 24 hours, you see water kind of just spilling over the road. Not very deep, but you know, that whole road becomes impassable and it's kind of a dangerous situation. So places where it becomes kind of a bottleneck because these culverts under roads were sized for storms in the past, that can create an unsafe condition. And as Carrie showed some of those pictures of washouts. So that's why we chose culverts as a focus of this project. So we can really dig in and find where's in this vulnerable and not just plan, but how can we actually go forward and replace them.
So I have a question.
Sure.
I think I drove by that area for the first time about a month ago.
Mhm.
And I thought it was so beautiful.
It is.
But if at any time you predict there will be rain to the point where the water is flowing on the street and making it dangerous, is there a plan to put railings so that people will at least know where the roadway is so that they don't venture into the water area there?
That might be.
Yeah, we don't have any plans to put any more guardrails. It's lined with stones and things like that, so you'd be able to tell where the roadway is.
Okay,
We have applied for grants through the state on several occasions for culvert replacement in this area. We haven't been granted the grant. But part of what we wanted to look at in the previous study was what could we do over here as opposed to you know, expanding the size of the culvert, raising the roadway elevation, things of that nature. And I know that this has been inundated, I think in 2014, and actually did top. So it has happened, and we expect it probably will happen. Yeah, that's the Ames Pond Causeway. Yeah. So that's that road going across there. There's a few different culverts that run under that road. But I think there's 3 of them, and all 3 together just can't carry the, when it really comes down.
So that isn't part of this project. Or it could be.
It could be, yeah. It's definitely something that we really want to look at through this.
Ames Pond is in the Taunton with the watershed. So this grant through NEPA covered the entire town, 2 watersheds.
It did. Yeah, so Petro's been a great partner, but the study was townwide, so.
Yeah.
A little bit outside of their own. Yeah. So one solution we've looked at, it's a pretty simple one, culvert replacements. I just wanted to point out that we're talking a lot about flooding, but there's other benefits that you can see with this. The state is really pushing for replacements that not only upsize it so we can get floods safely through, but also he recognizes that a lot of these culverts are passing streams through them that have aquatic organisms, are important habitats. And right now, if you see a tiny pipe on the left, that's metal on the bottom and might be set up a little ways. Fish can't pass through, it's not great for organisms. So there's kind of co-benefits where we can be helping a flood problem, but also if we replace it with something like on the right, which has a rocky bottom, it's pretty much more like a stream. It's both safer for people because the stream is flowing more naturally, but it's also better for wildlife, so it's kind of a win-win. So that's the type of thing that we're looking at.
You clean those out to make the water flow better.
Yeah, you can definitely clean them out, but a lot of them are just size so small that even if they're here to do that, it still can be a restriction.
The culvert on the right-hand side intentionally has a rocky bottom. To promote the wildlife passage.
The culvert that drains the little pond at Ames's, that's secondary. It's so much higher than, almost like it's filling up.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah,
It's like ineffective.
Yeah. Yeah, when we looked at that, like most of it's going through that very small one that's fully submerged and like shuts off the so that brings us to phase two. So the town owns 50 plus culverts in town. That's the number. I think we had about 50 in the first phase that we identified. So in this study, our plan as of right now is to look at all of them and assess them from a couple different ways. So one is the structural condition. So most of these are under roads, some of them are small bridges. So aside from flooding, we want to make sure that they're safe. A lot of these are old and infrastructure needs to be replaced. So looking at how safe is it structurally. Two is flooded faults, which we've discussed. These can be bottlenecks during a flood. So we want to make sure that they're sized appropriately so water can go through. Three is kind of community impact. So if it is causing flooding, what is that road serving? Is it a critical pathway? Is it cutting off lifelines for people? Who is affected by it? Things like that. So again, that's kind of also where all of your input is really important because you know the town the best, you know where there's flooding, where critical resources are, things like that. And then finally, what we just discussed, these are often on streams and have great ecological importance. These four factors will be all put together and will be used to come up with a priority. So the town has a list of kind of which ones are most critical, which ones should be replaced right away, which ones are okay and might be further down the line. Thank you. So most of them probably will be expanded in size for either flooding or ecological reasons. Unless there's really severe structural issues, I think those are the ones that will be prioritized, the undersized ones. So yeah, we'll be looking for opportunities to expand, and if it's not possible, looking for opportunities to mitigate storage, flooding in other ways, like storage or infrastructure.
So you're not limiting just the ones that are able to expand, so you're looking at different options.
Yeah.
How do you fund these?
So as part of our assessment, we're planning to look at grant funding opportunities, so we'll be part of, I think our plan is for the top 10 most critical culverts to also look at funding sources. So the state does have several grant programs specifically for culverts through DER, I think is the agency. There's also federal programs. So our plan is to have kind of recommendations for culvert replacement sizes and also potential funding sources. Because we really want to make sure that this plan is actionable and won't just be on the shelf, we'll be able to start moving forward with projects.
I think the town has done a couple of them anyway that I know of. On Bay Road, there was a big article in town meeting to replace that one. And something, I think on Pleasant Street.
Our most recent one was down on South Street. It was a culvert replacement down there.
And how did that get funded?
That was a town meeting article.
Okay, but the town meeting articles take a while, you gotta do it in May or maybe in fall. And, how soon do you have to get these things done when you notice a problem?
Well, it depends. I mean, if there is an emergency, then we'll have to tap into the, Public Works as an emergency fund that. We'd have to utilize, but these projects can be quite expensive. As you know. So we do chase after whatever grants we can go for. The grant cycles can be long as well, between, application and then the award. And then if there's, if there's any match, we have to have funding through town meeting prior to, that's one of the qualifications, for some of these grants, so. The whole process does take some time, so we try to get ahead of it and identify the problems, beforehand, so that we don't have these emergency situations, but things happen.
So I can get to you the information from the previous grants, so that
Yep, yeah, so that's the good part about having the timeline model is now for the flood part, we can assess, or we already have assessed all of these. So we know kind of their flood risk associated with it. And we'll use the predicted flooding to figure out what size they should be.
It's say it's a major road. Major street and how long. Rather say it's a major culvert replacement, but I know they make them pretty bad and stick them in, but they're still. Is that things to consider? Or detour?
We are considering. When we give recommendations, we'll be considering constructability and feasibility, but there will certainly be road impacts. I'm not sure for like timing right now, but it will definitely be looking into it if we're proposing something major like that. Yeah, good question. Yeah, I don't know if I have any more slides, but yeah, I think this is my last one. So outcomes, we've kind of talked through it, but we'll have a full inventory of culverts in the town. That map on the right, the red squares are the ones that we modeled in the last phase, so you can see there's a lot of them. Our Kleinfelder team plans to visit everyone and have a structural engineering team assess all of them. So we'll have, for the ones that are submerged, like in the Ames Long Pond, we're planning to get divers out there to go look at it. So some of them could be pretty fun.
Can that map be made larger so we can see what it's about?
No.
We'll be making it available to you, so on your
Yes.
screen, you can. make it
Yes.
bigger.
We're gonna send out these slides to everybody.
Yeah, and NetPro does have all of the maps from baseline
Yes.
listed on their website. So definitely make these notes.
Is that
Even
on
on
GIS
large-
as well?
Not for the public, some issues with
Okay.
security.
All right.
But even on a large map, culverts, they are kind of small.
Yeah.
Just one line in the middle of the road that could be 4 miles long.
Yeah.
Tough to see.
Yeah. And then I think we've mentioned everything else here, but yeah, just funding sources, permitting, those will all be considered as we make recommendations. And that was a really good point earlier about timeline. We are trying to be proactive here so that we're not caught in an emergency and have to scramble to replace one. Yeah, I think that's all I have. That's a good question.
Can you pump across the road even if the culvert's not doing what it's supposed to do?
Well, ideally, when we do culvert replacement, you want to do that at a dry time of year, right? So they'll do that in late summer typically. And then if there is still a water problem, if it's, say, we're going through a stream, it would be bypass pumping for that. But, we really need to do that, during the dry season. We ended up doing that over on South Street just recently. The project, I think it started in June or July, and by the time they actually had the old one ripped out and put the new one in, there was still some flow across the road, man, because of bypass pumping. even in August.
What I meant was in a time of heavy rain, if you had a problem, can it be done to? I think that
Yeah, so pumping stormwater is really sort of a last ditch effort. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Move itself.
You're right.
Anyways.
Observation. Stoughton is at the very end of the line. The headwaters of these branches of ponds up in Lake Glen. Same as said, so we're at the end of the line.
Yeah.
It seems like the appropriate place to start. This thing only gets worse downstream.
Yeah.
So is this kind of program gonna be going down, quote, downstream to other communities?
Yes, so we have, most of the downstream communities, Kleinfelders work with Canton, have run similar ones. But that's a good point because there are downstream impacts and when we suggest changes, we have to make sure that we're not moving a problem downstream. This is the place to start because it's easier to work top to bottom rather than starting at the bottom up. But we'll be looking at what are kind of decreases in flows, are there places we can store it upstream? Your question earlier about alternatives to culverts, that's part of it, making sure that we're not just sending everything shooting down as fast as possible, washing our hands of it here. So it is an interesting problem. I think that's also great why we have NEPRA, like they have kind of the more watershed approach, because we can't really look at town borders, that's where the problem stops.
Any other questions about the technical aspects? There will be other opportunities at future meetings to talk about it too. I know we're just throwing a lot of information at you.
Is it a good time to mention kind of other projects throughout the watershed that do impact that?
We could, so to Seth's point, we do, there is another project ongoing that we're also partnering with Stoughton on, to look at flooding watershed wide because water doesn't stop at the border. So we've got that information, on our website as well. And then, you know, from there, other towns are also looking at specific issues that they've got. I know Dedham's been doing some stuff. I know Canton did a flood model as well. So we're, you know, we're trying to keep everybody talking to each other and make sure that we've got the full picture.
The ponds here in Stoughton are connected by streams most of them anyway. And in my area, there's Woods Pond, which is down the end of Cotlet Street, in between Cotlet and Hunt Drive. And the water level is way down there. There's a lot of erosion, and there's a dam, which I think is kind of above everything. So it's not flooding in that area, but it's low. What's the story on that? What do we do? It needs to be done, if anything. To prevent erosion and to maybe raise the water level in some areas and not in others.
Well, we've had a drought recently, so we're feeling the effects of that. I think that's why that level is low.
It was before that too.
I've been out there recently. We actually just added that to our pond management program. So I think they'll be doing some of the vegetation management that you've seen in the other ponds to clean up the water. So I know it did have a good volume of standing water. Most of the times that I've been out there. I actually did a dam inspection on that probably 7 or 8 years ago now to analyze the condition of it. And ultimately, you know, if you look at dam removal there so that you wouldn't have a pond, that seems to be the ecological way that a lot of communities want to go these days. Is you see a lot of dams being removed. I don't know that necessarily want to do that here in Stoughton. People seem to like their water bodies as opposed to having the area channelized, you know.
It would be a marsh. It wouldn't be pleasant where the water was is muddy.
Yeah, so that particular dam has some sluice gates, so there are boards that could be added or removed I don't know if somebody's taken some out, but if you put more boards in, it restricts the flow and impounds more water.
But that has to be below the water level. The dam.
Yeah, on the
If
upstream
board-
side, so you
If it's
put,
all above the water, it doesn't do anything.
Is that a
It used
town
to
owned
be
dam?
it is, yeah.
dam, you could, maybe there were 8 inches or so, you just step over it. Now you have to kind of climb over it. So it's not reasonable. Hold on.
I haven't been out there in a very long time, so I don't know the current condition. But I know the dam is on.
There was a wall, I guess I'm not done. There was a wall made there by the WPA under Roosevelt. And then it's just kind of fell into the water. It's not good.
Sounds like it needs another visit.
Roosevelt began.
So that
Right.
brings us to you all and the Stoughton Climate Resilience Community Advisory Group. You know, this work is importantly done in partnership with community residents and kind of the sentiment, nothing about us without us. You know, we need community members' insight, we need your input, and that's why we're assembled here today and looking forward over the next year and a half until spring of 2026 while this project goes on. So to the next slide, you know, this is about bringing education about the climate impacts to community so that your lived experience can inform this project and inform the work that the city is moving forward on. So this is bringing empowerment to you as residents to participate in these planning projects and also to bring improved communication between town and the community members as we look at climate change and how we need to adapt and bring projects that build resilience. So like I said, if you know of other neighbors or other community members that might be interested, we'd love for you to join or invite them to join us in this work. And we will be doing these ongoing meetings probably quarterly, I think, as we see it. And some of it will be about educating about some of these real technical aspects of the work and continue to have the discussion with the town and the engineers and NEPA involved in moving the work forward.
So under the goals, I noticed that the first goal was educating the public, and that speaks to Sam's point that he made about addressing people probably in a language that they will understand better and things like that. But how do you plan to communicate with the residents? Probably in a newsletter or so and a mass mailing system? Do you have like a list of email addresses to reach people if we were to have a newsletter informing them of these things?
We do have some, and we'd love to get more. So we are hoping that this group can help us push the word out, get more people involved, so that we can identify and so that the town can identify more ways to communicate with people rather than, you know, just the website or, you know, just an email list. You know, how can we best reach everybody?
So could we just refer them to this website here?
Absolutely.
The Stoughton,
Yeah, no, go on.
We do have a
No,
Stoughton town manager Facebook.
Yep.
Facebook. We have notifications on our main webpage. And we have the town crier. There's multiple ways to get involved.
Yeah.
And there is a
And there
list
there
of-
has to be a multi-pronged approach.
Yes.
Yeah.
To the process, but we've got to identify what people are using as a medium to get their news and information. If nothing, the election should teach us something,
Yes,
right?
You should have the penny saver.
right, yeah.
Penny survey is great, but how many people read it?
Yeah,
I
and
get it in my home, I just throw it in the garbage.
yeah,
I
it's
got a
it's
lot of
fixed.
information.
Yeah.
from penny saver.
I know.
Believes that.
Yeah, and as we're looking at getting this current survey out, yeah, we're looking at the newspaper, we're looking at the cable access, we're looking at social media, we're looking at email, you know, try to broaden the
Exactly,
approaches
exactly.
to reach as many people as
So
possible.
I'm not saying that people don't look at it.
Yes,
It's just the number of people looking at it from, if you go like
That's why.
5 years, 10 years ago, is diminished greatly.
Yeah, and everybody's having this issue, right? Where are people getting their information? So
Yeah.
we do have a survey that we're gonna push out. We're gonna send it to you after this meeting in the hopes that you can help us distribute it to your networks. But as Karen said, you know, we're trying to use whatever media we have, you know, social media, cable. We've got an ad going in the Suburban Shopper next week. You know, so, because that gets in everybody's homes, and that was actually pretty useful, for a previous survey that we did. So, so we are using the tools that we have, and we're looking for other insights to other newsletters or other organizations, who can be involved and can help distribute it to their members. You know, if the New England Community Center, you know, has interested folks, you know, maybe, you know, that's an avenue for getting some of this information out.
I think to Michelle's, it has to be demographically targeted.
Yep.
Depends on the community. Community is older, they're more apt to read newspaper
Right.
and
Maybe cable.
cable and
Right.
things like that. I just got off cable.
Everybody's cutting the cord.
I'm only 61, so.
Yeah, we have social media access.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
We're using them. We are.
Yeah.
Other than Facebook.
Right.
Don't use Facebook, but I read it once in a while,
I know.
you know?
I know, especially in these current times.
It's really hard to keep up with all the
Exactly.
different ways now. Facebook's all about a website.
Yeah.
10 years ago, we had where everybody was getting their information now.
Right.
So, I mean, that leads us right into our discussion.
I have an idea, I want to get your feedback. When I first got approached to be on the Navajo. I was asked how could we improve the visibility and awareness of our watershed. And I thought of a instance that happened in 2016. I took my boat down in Fairhaven. There's a fellow down there that's amazing photographer, he's also a Mrs. Kravitz to the nth degree. He knows everybody's business. M.L. Barron down in Fairhaven, and he posted a photograph of Buzzards Bay, West Island, which is part of Fairhaven, and it had all the dangerous rocks. But he took the names of the dangerous rocks and put them on the side. He said, can you match up the name with the rock to the proper one? He was ATX and then. And I thought, that's a really good idea. Now, being a sailor, I'm familiar with that area. And he did it again this past July, just before my meeting with Ian. And Ian said, how can we make people more aware? And I thought of that, it was like instant. So working with Larry in engineering, coming up with some maps soon, we're gonna post a map of the two watersheds and stuff, everything on it. And then about a couple weeks later, over those different Facebook pages, we're going to post the same map with all the streets and all the water, bodies of water, but put names off to the side saying, can you match up the names? And hopefully, I think there's several audiences we're addressing, older people like me, and then younger people who are just beginning to really realize we have these bodies of water that are important. And then there's that in between that nobody seems to care, regardless of demographic. And I'm hoping that it'll sort of inspire people to say, I didn't know that stream had three
Right.
names, or I didn't know that was that pond, and then that pond has two names. And I'm hoping that it'll generate that kind of awareness. So what do you guys think? Do you think that's a crazy idea or something that might succeed?
I think it's a good idea.
Okay.
to the extent people are gonna be on Facebook, and I think a lot of people are turning away from Facebook. So I just say if there's another media way
I'll
to
just use
do
that.
it, no, but if there are other sources in addition to Facebook to use
I
that.
actually looked at three different Facebook pages, enthusiasts, Stoughton enthusiasts, Stoughton news and everything, Stoughton. And that combined readership, if it's correct, is around 22 to 25,000 people. Let's say only a third of that reads it. If we can get a third of that number to read and actually think about it, I think we made some great headlines.
I think you're right about the Facebook, people trying to wait from that. Craig, I think you can attest, there's still a lot of people that, you know.
Yeah, I
There's a
follow
lot
those
of
groups,
Yeah.
and I
there's a lot
never
of
comment on them. I like to see what people are thinking
Yeah.
about. We do roadway projects and things and,
They get a lot of traction now.
Oh, that's good, yeah, that's.
What other media would you recommend?
There really is.
Well, I mean, it depends on who you target. It
Unfortunately.
really depends.
Yeah.
The one younger generation. They have to go to
Instagram, maybe?
Instagram.
Yeah.
Some other chat rooms, TikTok, and
Which one?
LinkedIn, more professionals look at that. And I just want to make sure I say one thing. Let's not forget the younger people.
Yeah.
They are more eager to help with climate change than any of us put together.
that's true.
Yeah.
They are right on point when it comes to climate change.
How do we recruit them to this group?
That's
Maybe
the
work
problem.
with that
They don't have
school.
time. Give them something
If they're,
that they
yes,
can
an
do
environmental
online,
group at the high school.
they'll be there. But if you tell them to come to a meeting like this, they'll be sure.
Yeah.
A lot of work at the high school.
Who does?
So you check with Anya.
No, I was wondering, and this came to a point, is there any incentive with the school, with